Hey there! Today, we're diving into the essentials of baking. If you've ever wanted to bake cookies, cakes, or even bread but felt intimidated, don't worry. Baking is actually really fun and easy once you understand a few key basics. So, whether you're a total beginner or just looking to improve your baking skills, I've got you covered. In this video, I'll walk you through everything you need to know: the most important ingredients, how to mix your batter or dough the right way, how to bake things perfectly, and even some pro tips for making your baked goods taste amazing. So grab your mixing bowls, and let's get started. Understanding baking ingredients. The first thing to know is that baking is like a science experiment. You need the right ingredients and the right amounts for everything to work. Let's break down the key ingredients and why they matter. First, we have flour. This is the base of most baked goods, providing structure. But did you know that different types of flour can change your final result? All-purpose flour is great for cookies and cakes, but if you want softer, fluffier results, cake flour is a better option. If you're making bread, you'll want bread flour, which has more protein to help form gluten. Next up, we have leavening agents like baking powder, baking soda, and yeast. These are what make your baked goods rise. Baking powder and baking soda react with liquids and heat to create air bubbles, giving cakes and cookies their fluffiness. Yeast, on the other hand, is a live ingredient that helps bread rise over time. Then, we have fats like butter, oil, and shortening. These ingredients add moisture and richness. Butter adds amazing flavor and helps create a tender texture. Oil makes cakes extra soft, and shortening is great for flaky pastries. We can't forget about sugar. Besides making things sweet, sugar plays a big role in texture. It caramelizes in the oven, giving cookies their golden brown edges and cakes their perfect crumb. It also helps keep baked goods soft by locking in moisture. Then there's eggs. Eggs help bind everything together and add richness. If you've ever made a recipe that calls for just egg whites, that's because egg whites help make things light and airy. Egg yolks, on the other hand, add more fat, making things rich and soft. Finally, we have liquids like milk, water, and buttermilk. These control the consistency of your batter or dough. Buttermilk, for example, gives cakes and pancakes that perfect fluffy texture because it reacts with baking soda to create extra bubbles. One super important thing to remember: always measure your ingredients carefully. Baking is precise, so too much or too little of any ingredient can change the final result. When measuring flour, always scoop it into your measuring cup and level it off with a knife, never pack it down. And for liquids, use a liquid measuring cup and check at eye level. Prepping for baking. Now that we know our ingredients, let's talk about prep work. A big mistake a lot of people make is jumping straight into baking without setting things up properly. Trust me, taking a few extra minutes to prepare will make a huge difference. The first step is preheating your oven. If your recipe says 350 degrees Fahrenheit 175 degrees Celsius, you need to make sure your oven is fully heated before you put anything inside. Baking in a cold oven can mess up the rise and texture of your baked goods. Next, prepare your baking pans. If you're making a cake, grease your pan and line it with parchment paper to prevent sticking. For cookies, use a baking sheet lined with parchment or a silicone mat. This helps ensure even baking and makes cleanup so much easier. And one more tip: if a recipe calls for room temperature ingredients, like butter or eggs, make sure to let them sit out before using them. Room temperature ingredients mix more evenly, giving you a better texture. Mixing methods: how to get the perfect texture. Now, let's talk about how to mix your ingredients. Mixing might seem simple, but different techniques create different textures. If you're making cookies or cakes, you'll often start with the creaming method. This is where you beat butter and sugar together until it's light and fluffy. This traps air inside, helping your baked goods rise and have a soft texture. For muffins, pancakes, and delicate cakes, you might use the folding method. This means gently combining ingredients instead of aggressively mixing. Overmixing can create tough, dense textures, so folding helps keep things light and fluffy. And if you're making bread, you'll need to knead the dough. Kneading develops gluten, which gives bread its chewy texture. The more you knead, the stronger the gluten network becomes, which is why bread dough feels stretchy. One pro tip: don't overmix cake or muffin batter. If you mix too much, you can develop too much gluten, making your baked goods dense and tough. The key is to mix just until everything is combined. Baking and checking for doneness. Alright, now that everything is mixed, it's time to bake. Every recipe has a specific baking time, but there are also ways to check if your baked goods are ready. For cakes, insert a toothpick into the center. If it comes out clean, it's done. For cookies, look for golden edges and slightly soft centers. They'll continue to set after you take them out of the oven. For bread, tap the bottom, it should sound hollow if it's fully baked. And here's a tip: rotate your baking tray halfway through if your oven has hot spots. This helps everything bake evenly. Cooling and storing your baked goods. Once your baked goods come out of the oven, let them cool properly. Cake should cool in the pan for about 10 minutes before transferring to a wire rack. Cookies should rest on the baking sheet for a few minutes before moving to a cooling rack to avoid breaking. For storage. Bread stays fresh longer if you wrap it in a cloth. Cookies and cakes should be kept in an airtight container. If you want to keep cookies soft, store them with a slice of bread, it helps maintain moisture. Final thoughts and outro. And that's Baking 101. Now you know the essential ingredients, mixing methods, and baking tips to create amazing homemade treats. Whether it's cakes, cookies, or bread, these fundamentals will help you bake like a pro. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more baking tips. And let me know in the comments what's your favorite thing to bake. See you next time, and happy baking!